You made it. For Honor has officially taken at least 10 years off my life. No pun intended. It's the kidney stone experience, baby, but I still love the game with every fiber of my being, and that's why I'm going to be discussing the strengths and weaknesses of each hero in this meta. This tier list will showcase the best heroes to play in matchmaking lobbies that will give you the most amount of value even if you don't perform 100% optimally, especially with the random teammates that you get. And of course the games where you're stuck with only 2 players on your team and the rest are bots because For Honor has no backfill system. So in layman's terms, the S tiers, you can have about 10 cocktails and still do incredibly well, while the D tiers, you'll need to have an ass computer, okay? I'll talk about them mainly in the 4v4 teamfighting aspect, but I'll make a quick mention of them in duels too. Keep in mind there's quite a few heroes that are good in 4s, but not so great in 1s. It's important to make this tier list now because Ubisoft interns recently did a huge stamina overhaul, where if you're unbalanced, or in other words, fall on your butt, you get your stamina back instantly. Quite a few heroes have severely been traumatized by this change, which makes weaker heroes even weaker in my opinion, but it also makes stronger heroes with a ton of pressure less punishing to agree, especially when you're out of stamina. So it's a win-win-lose scenario for all of us. Another point to add is that just because a hero can be brainless to play, it doesn't mean they don't have a high skill curve. Strong heroes can have a low skill floor, but they can still have a very high skill curve because the more tools you have, the more things you need to think about. However, this mostly just applies to fighting actual good players that already know how the game works. Before we get into the tier list, we should go over my thought process on what makes a hero good in the first place. The more tools the hero has, the more likely you'll outperform a hero with less tools. That's simply the way the game works. The only way to combat this is to outplay your opponents, but most people want to have more tools than less tools in general, so starting off, heroes that have undodgeables, unblockables, gank setups, dodge bashes, unreactable lights, chase tools to catch those slippery dodge rollers, please remove dodge roll in Ubisoft, dodge attacks, enhanced lights, recovery cancels, soft feints, and of course, their feats will be playing a huge role into determining their power level. There's one more category that also makes a huge difference when a hero has this, but it's what I call the clutch potential. Full blocks or defensive stances, hyper armor, deflect, superior blocks, high heavy parry, damage punishes on like heavy attacks or light parries, such as Lawbringer Impale or Warmommy's Wall Impale, and special passives like Way of the Shark, like Nobushi's, Peacekeeper's ability to have enhanced lights when an opponent is bleeding, which is shagadelic. Some of these clutch potentials are pretty devastating in skilled hands. Heroes that don't have this, it makes them a lot weaker, but heroes that do have this and they don't have all the tools that A tier and S tier hero might have, it makes them much stronger. It can easily swing the fight into your favor. So you can't underestimate some of these heroes that punish you for being better than you or making good reads. And the last bit of information that I want to mention is the perk system. There are some major perks you should always try to run on your hero if your hero has these. Bastion, Vengeful Barrier, Bulk Up, Last Stand, Remedy, Headhunter, Rapid Refresh, Endurance, Rising Dawn, Supersonic are all the feats that I find the most useful in matchmaking lobbies. Any other ones are sort of negligible, but it's up to your opinion how you like to play. In the grand scheme of things, I feel like all these perks that I just mentioned will help your survivability tenfold. You'll also be more useful to your teammates too. Now that all that information is out of the way, let's get into the most brainless heroes that give you the most amount of value while you're smoking some tree or drinking your pain away because you realize you're still playing For Honor. The character orders won't necessarily matter. What matters is the category they are in, since so many heroes, they're basically getting the same amount of rework. We're getting unblockables, undodgeables, chain bashes, and the same amount of recoveries. But that doesn't mean this game ain't fun, I'll tell you what. The first S tier is still Zhanhu. He's been terrorizing lobbies with his unblockable zones and heavies ever since he got his rework. The unblockable zone is really his bread and butter in teamfights. His Sifu can be used as a recovery cancel, allows him to infinitely flow into his unblockable mix-up for days. Let's just not forget the fact that target swapping unblockable heavies are simply insane. And if I do say so myself, they are the best unblockable heavies in the game. Zhanhu's that is. You won't even know what hits you because he has a huge hitbox and he travels quite a distance with the forward momentum. If you decide to roll, he'll catch you with his forward dodge heavy, which has amazing tracking. JJ's dodge attack is also a mix-up as he can soft feint into a light or feint into a GB, forcing you to make a read, otherwise you allow him to get into his unblockable mix-up. He can keep doing this and dancing around you to reposition too. He doesn't even have to commit to anything. JJ is objectively the best hero in Dominion, whether you can utilize him to his fullest potential or not. As long as you keep a target swapping and externally those unblockable zones and heavy attack, it's always profit. It can be really hard to tell if a JJ will target swap, especially with his zone attack. What makes it so strong is that getting hits done is just so common, you'll always find ways to land your zone. If you're low on health and a JJ zone hits you while your hit's done, you're pretty much dead. Let's not forget that Zhanhu also has his choke, that can wall splat and unbalance you. This clutch potential combined with his Sifu that not only regains stamina back, but gives him iframes during it. It makes him one of the most slippery heroes in the entire game with incredibly high damage output. His shin kick is great for neutral pressure and, oh yeah, of course, hyper armor on his neutral heavies. It has such a huge hitbox. He's hitbox galore. He's basically Medjay, but he's the Chinese version of it. Anti-ganking is top tier, and so is his stalling and ganking. His feats also can come in real handy. Against all odds will be great for team fights as they deal more damage. Deadly or passive revive is also another standout. Benefaction, which gives your teammates faster stamina regen, can be helpful, but Inspire probably be more beneficial to me, at least in my opinion. And then of course we have Fire Flask and Phalanx as the go-to for his fourth. Fury Barrage can be used, but for your fourth you want something that can swing a team fight in seconds. In duels, JJ is still a strong pick, as he still has easy access to unblockables and incredibly high parry damage punishes, so I'm going to put him in A tier. Moseying on over to the next S tier, and that will be my boy, Pirate. Pirate has basically almost every single tool available to him, her. She has a fast chain bash that deals instant damage on dodgeable lights, hyper armor on chain heavies, unblockable finisher heavies, a low guard break vulnerable forward dash heavy that is unblockable, and hyper armor, so that's great. Also is a chase tool, so that's also better. One of the best dodge attacks in the entire game because its hitboxes is like Kensei zone on crack, and of course you can cancel recoveries with a dodge or another dodge attack and another dodge attack. And if that isn't enough, her follow-up pistol blast adds another hit stun so that your teammates, actually their teammates, has plenty of time to use two hands instead of one to hit you with the heavy attack. Needless to say, she's got more than enough tools at her disposal, which makes her a hero with a low skill floor, giving you tons of value, while anti-ganking with her is fairly good ganking as well. And that goes for her stalling capabilities too. Her feats are also incredibly strong too because they can chain off on any single attack you have, and they deal a shinto ton of damage. Bloodlust gives you higher attack and defense, Trickshot does so much bleed damage it's insane, and Gunpowder Surprise is just a team-winning button. Indomitable, which gives you shields at critical health, is also a swell old tool too. Her teamfighting capabilities are astronomically better than pretty much most of the cast, and you'll see her picked everywhere because she's an easy hero to pick up, and once you learn how to play her well, you'll be giving everybody the cock and ball torture experience. In duels, I still think she's a top tier pick, and you won't be needing too much brain cells to use her. S tier for sure. The next S tier we have is going to be Conqueror. Man is a 50-50 machine with his dodge bashes, chain bash that can be faded now, which is also really shagadelic, unblockable chain heavy for days, and a full block cancel after every single move. Incredibly hard to punish unless you yourself are using a dodge bash character. Now Conqueror doesn't have any way to chase somebody who rolls within his rework, which is hilarious, but to be honest, he doesn't really need to. His job is to stall on point and give everybody the kidney stone experience. However, I would like to give him one, it's just that Ubisoft doesn't know how to balance their game. This fast forward dodge bash and defensive side dodge bashes will make you hate fighting him every time, since it's really good defensively and offensively. Once he starts target swapping those unblockable side heavies, prepare to wonder why you didn't pick Black Power and flip everything you see. Anti-ganking capabilities they're pretty bad, they're okay, but once they start rolling, you're not going to be able to catch them and you're pretty much screwed. You have to be resetted to neutral and Revenge basically becomes useless. Stalling and ganking is where he shines though, it's top tier stuff. Conqueror's feats are honestly pretty bad. The only good feats he has is Shield Basher feat, which allows him to deal damage with the bash. And don't get me wrong, this feat alone brings him like a billion tiers up, but all of his other feats are negligible, especially with the punch through feat. The punch through feat, if you guys didn't know, if you hit somebody with a heavy attack and they block it, it deals a little bit more damage. But since he has unblockables now, that feat doesn't even make sense anymore. So it shows that Ubisoft doesn't really think about their reworks and think about the feats that affects the heroes. And that's as plain as day. They've reworked quite a few heroes already, and this is still a common occurrence. In duels, I'm going to slap them up in S tiers because with so many tools and ease of unblockables, you won't need to be thinking too much, and fortunately, your opponent will have to. We're just getting started with Raider, and my man is going up in the S tiers for sure. Dude's got unblockable for days, and once he starts target swapping externally, well, you're basically screwed. Prepare to take heavies to the face that you thought were targeted onto you. And if somehow that doesn't work, his Storming Tap is unreactable and will bonk you until you decide to make a read and parry it. And if you mess up on the timing, well, I suppose you can eat a hyper armor heavy side to the face. Raider is a monster in teamfights, and you have to respect everything he does. Stampede Charge is an amazing gank tool that will lead you or grant two heavies to the face because he is allowed a heavy and his teammates can pretty much whop you in the face after that. Raider's anti-ganking is pretty good, and for his stalling is decent too. Ganking is obviously top tier. And as for his feats, Rush, Tireless are great, Mark for Death, Inspire, Bear Trap are all good choices. Fury is really nice too. In Battlecry, I actually like running because it helps you out in the mid lane quite a bit. Of course, Fire Flash is OP. For Duels, Raider is still an absolute S tier pick. A lot of unreactable damage. I will say he has some bad matchups against Warlord, but other than that, he's got good damage values, unreactable offense, and hyper armor for days, and a really good dodge attack too. He also has soft feintable heavies on all of his attacks, and one important note is that when Raider is externally or dodging to the side, I think he has the largest range ever, so he can reposition incredibly quickly and pretty much ignore a lot of offense. Man's got some scary offense with little to zero stamina consumption. Shinobi is devastating in this meta, as he is one of the best team fighters and gankers in this game right now. With his forward, side, and double dodge kicks, it gives him so many ways to initiate offense and defense at the same time. One crazy thing is that when Shinobi uses his kick and the enemy pops revenge, his follow-up attack does not knock him down. Ubisoft interns haven't fixed this yet, and I'm pretty sure it's not an intended mechanic because most heroes that have a follow-up attack or hit a character at all, when they pop revenge, they fall down. But this makes him incredibly safe to force someone to pop revenge. His sickle rain also places you on your knees for practically a lifetime for their teammates to hit you with constant heavies, because his Shinobi's follow-up kick can be used infinitely to 100 to 0 you. Oh, and let's not forget that he has undodgeable chain heavy finishers, which make it so that you can't dodge him willy-nilly. Another thing that makes him unpredictable is that when he double dodges, he can initiate a light from any direction, a heavy, forcing you to make a read on whether it will be a kick, guard break, light, heavy, or zone, which has amazing cleave, by the way. His anti-ganking is pretty decent, but his strengths lie within ganking and stalling. His feat stealth hides him from projectiles, which is fairly common in this meta, especially with Medjay around. Shurikens, which deal way too much damage and can do up to 60 damage for some reason, thanks to Ubisoft. And how could I forget Ki, one of the most annoying and unbalanced tier 1s, which takes away all your stamina. I don't run this feat because I feel like it's a very unfun feat to use, and whoever does run that, you guys can go fuck yourself. Nail Bomb and Nuki Kubi practically means you never run out of stamina and health, so that's always fun. In Duels, he's still an S tier pick because of so many options he has and his variability with his mix-ups. A low skill floor with a really high skill curve, as usual. Now, initially when Shaolin got reworked, I had deemed him to be a pretty balanced hero that wasn't too strong, but after seeing him in this meta and seeing him in 4v4, now that people learn how to play him, he's one of the best heroes in the game right now. Shaolin's top light is enhanced, so prepare to enter his insane 50-50 mix up with his cheese dance, being able to use undodgeable heavies, a fast chain bash, dodging out of cheese dance into a forward kick, or target swapping and repositioning with his amazing dodge attack that can enter cheese dance again makes him super unpredictable. And during those dodge attacks, he can deflect you, so you gotta be careful not attacking him during his cheese dance, or you'll also get hit by his crushing counter lights. And of course, his sweep is one of the best gank tools right now, because I don't think it really feeds that much revenge, and for some reason, I'm always dying to it, because one, it's such a hard 50-50 to read, and you literally have to dodge beforehand, because it has a huge hitbox for the sweep. Are we done yet? No, we are not. His triple lights are incredible for ganks as well, because it takes years and years for him to finish his 3-hit chain stuns. It is so annoying to get hit by this because the enemy has so much time to land heavies on you. Shaolin's chain lights after his heavies are also unreactable, so it's a good mix up from time to time. Man's also got a forward dodge heavy who try to catch people who roll, and he gets into his cheese dance run afterwards, so after being meh for so long, he's got it going on. Anti-ganking is pretty solid, but his ganking and stalling are really top tier because he can crush counter externally, and his feats are great for team fights as well. Stealth or Q trap for tier 1, tier 2 is blink. That's the best one in my opinion, and for some reason, I don't know if this is just me, but I can't seem to dodge that feat even if I dodge early. They must have fixed the hitboxes or something. It's so much harder for me. I don't know, is it just me, or have you guys been experiencing this? Invigorate is so strong now and might need a nerf because his hits on cheese dance are just so common, and getting constantly AoE heal, it could just be a little bit too strong, but I'll have to see what you guys think about that. And then of course we have Teleport, which is a great way to stay in shape. For Duels, his unpredictability will still be relatively the same, as he's still a menace. I'll probably put him around high A tier since his chain pressure is really scary. Kyoshin is next on the chopping block. I'm going to put him in S tier as he's incredibly easy to play. Think of Black Prior, but if they buffed Black Prior. Imagine that, if you will. His full block is so good for ganking, it will keep you stun locked for days, and you can probably take your hands off the controller or keyboard, and you still be getting hit by Kazi's dance and his teammates' heavies. You guys remember when Centurion has his cutscene? Pretty much people just take their hands off the controller and wait for it to end. Kyoshin still has his forward kick to initiate offense, unblockable tap heavy from Kazi's dance, and that actually is scary since it has some decent forward tracking, a 500 ms light and kaze stance as well, which you can follow with more stuns, and you can follow up with the side heavy that has crushing counter properties, and it's amazing for teamfights once you start externaling it because it has forgiving crushing counter properties to it, and you can keep continuing your kaze stance movement. Other than that, Kyoshin has a fast chain bash and a chained finisher undodgeable heavy or light force 50-50. Add crushing counters to all of his neutral lights, and well, you basically have a hero that you can't hit unless you guard break him. He can cancel his recoveries with his full blocks too, just like every other hero we've been getting. But if you start guard breaking him, prepare to eat some lights or zones, because that's what they will be expecting. Anti-ganking is decent, but his stalling and ganking is where he shines. His feats, you should probably just run the first 4 that are defaulted. For duels, I feel like placing him in A tier or A+ tier, since he has all the tools to mix you up, but he can be very safe, so he could be an S tier hero. Alright, hope you haven't fallen asleep quite yet, because we are on the last hero for the S tiers. Aramusha has an unreactable bash that can kill someone in revenge, which is incredibly helpful. Unreactable deadly feint, lights, dodge attack, infinite chain heavies and lights, and after all that he can recovery cancel into a full block on all of his moves. If you don't have a dodge bash, you'll have a hard time punishing him. You'll need some good reads or unblockables. His forward dodge heavy also has a bash, and if he lets it fly, he has hyper armor to trade with you. His side heavy chains are so good for teamfights because they have huge hitboxes and damage values while also being able to recover cancel into full block, so it makes him incredibly scary, and you have to respect him when he's throwing out those side heavies. Hopefully you're a Kyoshin or a Black Prior or a Conqueror, and that's the only way to punish him. In his blockade, he has 3 options: a top heavy that deals 20 damage, a 16 damage side heavy that hits all around him with pretty good hitboxes, or a kick that can wall split to land his side heavies. Hard to kill and even harder hitter. Anti-ganking is pretty solid with this character, while his stalling and ganking are top tier. His feats are pretty basic, with Juggernaut being his only good one in my opinion, and for duels he still remains an S tier duels because of his unreactable offense. He's a really hard hero to kill, just in general. On to the next brainless hero, Orochi. I don't know why people say Orochi is bad. He's one of the best team fighters in the entire game. Man's got amazing top heavy unblockable that has tons of forward momentum that will catch you when you don't expect it. It's like, you feel like it's not going to hit you, but it has phantom range, just like Highlander's heavy attacks. Undodgeable dodge attack, fast lights, and dodge cancel recoveries on every single attack. And once you start target swapping, prepare to never hit him unless you have hyper armor or full block, or you time your undodgeables, right? Otherwise he's going to deflect your ass. Accidental deflect you too, by the way. His zone has a huge hitboxes, and his Storm Rush is quite frankly an incredible gigging tool. It's really, it's annoying. It's really crazy. It has a very long hit stun, and you continue to do it indefinitely. It's an okay mix-up in 1v1 situations, but that's where his forward kick comes in. Lots of pressure with this hero, and you really have to watch out for him. Anti-ganking is pretty good, while his stalling and ganking are top tier as well. His feats are nothing special, except for Kiai and Kunai of course, and Slip Through, which improves your damage a lot. As for duels, he's way more manageable as he can't target swap his attacks anymore. Storm Rush isn't as viable anymore in ones, so he has to feint it or go into a kick mix-up, or feint it and try to attempt a light parry, because most people are going to be trying to interrupt him in the first place because Storm Rush is just so slow. But most players are going to be chilling and just listen to music and stuff, so Storm Rush will work plenty of times. A tier. Zhanhu is a very similar hero to Orochi, and he's a high A+ tier hero that's amazing in teamfights. With side unblockable heavies and undodgeable zone hitboxes as large as your mom, he can hit everybody. The unblockable finisher light can be helpful too if you aren't paying attention to his animations as much or the sound cues, but it's still a decent mix-up combined with his forward palm strike. And of course, he can cancel all of his moves with a dodge. Very fun. His superior block also guarantees him a follow-up light attack that is unblockable, making him a slippery ass hero that can punish you for having safe dodges. His dodge attacks are also 400 MS, so you will have trouble parrying those if you're one-on-one with him, so it's important to try to external him and go for the parry if you see the indicator. His forward dodge light is also enhanced, so he has options to get into his unblockables or another bash. And I mean, other than that, he's going to be externaling your ass all day, so expect to see a bunch of unblockables or undodgeables targeted behind you and not actually at you. Zhanhu anti-ganking is top tier, as you'll see unblockable for days, and you can't really roll away from him because he does have a roll catcher. His stalling and ganking are also disgustingly good. Lots of people don't know, but his feats are actually underrated. His dagger deals way more damage if you're on fire. Quinlan Rose does a load of fire damage. For some reason, he doesn't have a fire bow for his third feat, which it just blows my mind. He has a normal longbow. Aramusha has a fire bow. Why does that even make sense? I don't think that's a lore related issue, right? Someone tell me. Leave me a comment down below, because that doesn't make any sense to me. It blows my mind. Fiery Breath passive allows him to deal more damage if you're on fire, so it's a fun way to make him like part of the Fire Nation or something. Add Scorch and Deluge, and you basically become part of Fantastic Four Stick. For Duel, Zhanhu is still a great pick. Solid A tier since he's got a lot of fun mix-ups, although I will say his unblockable light attacks are high risk and low reward, but if you can mix your opponent up and not use it as often, you're going to be eating a lot of those heavies and those lights in my opinion. Alright, and up next we have our local edgelord. Like I said before, Blackbriar and Kyoshin are quite similar. It's just that Kyoshin can gank much easier than Briar now. Briar is more of like someone who stands alone in a base and he pretty much just destroys everybody because of his edginess. Briar is still a strong pick, don't get me wrong. He has fast bashes, he has a good chain bash, unblockable bulwark heavy, which is really nice for cleaving, undodgeable finisher heavies within his mix-ups, and plenty of crushing counters on his lights. Like, he's a strong pick, like he's not bad at all, it's just doesn't seem as good compared to all the power creep that we've been having so far. Oh, and a neat crushing counter for his forward dodge heavy too that everyone seems to, well, nobody really uses it because it's terrible. Pretty amazing again, but it'll happen like once in a blue moon, and when you see it, you'll wonder why we never see anything unique ever again. Blackbriar also has a bulwark counter which flips everything in the vicinity it hits, and it deals a ton of damage. I think it's like 27 damage, 24. It's his clutch potential and can swing team fights into his favor because there's enough time for his teammates to land heavies. Plus, his positives don't end there. Anti-ganking is decent, but stalling and ganking are incredibly better for this character. His feats allow him to transfer shields, regain health while in bulwark, the kidney stone breaker, and all for shelter, shields for days. I will say you will need to learn to external crushing counter and practice with his bulwark, but after that you'll pretty much be impossible to take down. In duels, he's still one of the best heroes. Good recoveries, when in doubt, just flip it out. A tier. Hitokiri, she is a menace. Basically hyper armor on all of her infinite chain heavies, which makes her, she's a menace. Basically hyper armor on all of her infinite chain heavies, which means you don't really want to mess with her. You gotta respect her, and respect her fully charged finisher heavies too. It's great for ganks because it throws you off with indicators, and you don't want to take 34 damage to the nards. Her finisher line is hyper armor too, but you really want to be worrying about her kick mix-up, which nets her a heavy every single time she lands it, and the last one, which has hyper armor, she does sweep you and she gets a heavy as well, and it allows your teammates, their teammates, to get heavies on you as well, so it just deals a shit ton of damage. You gotta be careful with that. The forward dodge heavy isn't that good as tracking goes, but on a raid you can hit people who do dodge roll away, but then again, if you're anticipating a dodge anyways, just feign your kick and guard break, because for some reason she has like, she just pulls you in for some reason within her kick mix, so she can just guard break you for days. There's not much to say about her, but if you target swap and spam those variable timed heavies, you'll probably come out on top. Hitokiri's anti-gank is decent and okay, but you can't really do much if they start to roll away. Stalling is decent, and ganking is the scary part about her hero. Hitokiri's feats are not bad at all. They're actually quite fun and unique to her kit, and I really like that. Deliverance gives you full shields, and you can't be interrupted in execution unless you're guard broken. Tainted Gift, it allows you to mark a hero with this, and if this enemy is executed, get this, you get an AoE heal. So I think that's really cool, and it's really unique to her. I think more heroes should get something like this. Bloodlust, Righteous Deflection is OP, solid choices. Spirit Shroud gives you damage reduction after you execute someone until you die, but the Bastion perk kind of does the same thing, except it's on 1 point. So you'll need to decide if you want to run both, so you'll always have damage resistance after an execution, or just being on point. I would prefer to run this with my Hitokiri so you get damage reduction all the way around, because it's not like you're going to be sitting on a point the entire game. That's just super boring. As for duels, she's still an amazing hero. She's a hero that requires you to parry variable timed heavies, and if you can't do that or make good reads, she'll chip you down and you'll just lose the trades. The kick mix-up will also eat you up. Solid A tier. Okay, and here we have our big PHAT fat man. Shugoki is still a tricky hero to fight. A+ tier for sure, or high A tier. He's got hyper armor and very well timed heavies on everything. A great forward and dodge headbutt that deals instant damage, unblockable heavy finishers, slow, but they still deal quite a bit of damage and have hyper armor, so it's a pretty good tool for dealing team fights. Great ganking tool with his hug, and he deals quite a bit of damage while he heals, so it's a clutch potential for him, and during this hug, you can pretty much get hit by follow-up heavies, which is always a fun time. A light parry also guarantees a hug, which is such a fun punish to do. I think more heroes need this kind of fun mechanic, you know, something that doesn't do too much damage, but is a really cool-ass animation. You get health back, and you get to hug people. For God's sakes, it's a win-win. When was the last time you were hugged? Riddle me that, Batman. His Demon Ball is also really good for ganks, and every wall splat allows a hug too. More reasons to play this character. His zone also has great hitbox, and it has hyper armor, so it's a great chain starter to get into your heavies, especially in team fights. Shugoki's anti-gank is pretty solid, except he can't really catch dodge rollers even though he has a forward dodge heavy attack. But his main form of damage is just getting you at the grab and max punishing you with the light into top heavy finisher. Stalling and ganking is top tier though. Shugoki's sprint while out of stamina is probably one of the best first feats. Juggernaut, staggering blows, what you should always be running. For duels, I really believe he can be an alpha with his very well timed heavies and ability to get health back. Couple that when his dodge bashes, which has really good iframes. There's only a few things to be scared of when using him, and that of course is people who can script. Solid A tier hero. Gladiator is another hero on the A tier category. His easy gank setups with toe steps and the unblockable skewer allows him to dish a ton of damage with your teammates and allows your team to gank up on your prey pretty easily. He's super easy to gank with, which is why I put him such high in the tier list, as it's just one button you press and it instantly gets you value. His zone is still pretty amazing as an opener. It can be unpunishable for most of the cast still, which is hilarious. The only bad thing is that reflex guard still exists and Gladiator doesn't really have good team fighting capabilities. It's okay, but it's not great either. So his team fighting is gonna suck. So you kind of just like have to stand back and hopefully your reflex guard doesn't go away to get hit by a Medjay heavy attack, which is so damn slow. His anti-ganking and stalling are still pretty bad, and his ganks are what skyrocket him up to this level, so prepare to take some toes. Feats are pretty solid, but nothing to write home about, besides Haymaker, which deals a lot of damage on every single bash or throw, and of course the Trident that deals 50 damage. One little thing that I keep forgetting to do, and I think people should do, is that if you have Haymaker and you get a guard break or someone, throw them first to a wall and land heavy. That's the max amount of damage, because you get more damage. For duels, I think he's quite a fun hero, yet viable since he does have easy access to unblockables, and being able to deflect into skewer nets him just a shinto ton of damage. Plus being able to throw them during a skewer also increases your damage output. His flow is really nice too because after a zone attack, he can heavy attack, and one important thing that helps him a lot during fights is that his toe step actually pushes your enemy away from you, resetting the fight back to neutral and gives you a ton of space to breathe. The opponent cannot go for a neutral bash right after that. So duels, I'd rank him a solid A tier hero. Alright, halfway there, every booty. Warmonger is A tier. Her feats alone make it scary for her to be in the roster. Just keep the first 4 and rotate well with your team, applying the poop on your sword, then you'll do just right. You'll do just right. All of her lights are enhanced, which helps her keep attacking, and she can enter a chain bash that is a chargeable one with hyper armor, allowing you to trade with her for 29 damage heavy if landed. You can also target swap this, and the animation looks pretty crazy. She does have a dodge heavy that is unblockable, but it has little to no iframes and can be interrupted incredibly easily. So if you see her use that, just light her out of it. But you gotta be careful because she could be baiting you out. She could go for a feint and try to parry you. It's more used as a repositioning tool, and you can try to external an enemy and try to get behind them, but your position needs to be really good, and sometimes you need to be ready to feint and parry those instant lights. Then of course we have her forward dodge on dodgeable heavy, which I think is one of her strongest tools. It's fast, it travels for days, and it will hit Tiandis whenever they dodge. Anti-ganking and stalling is okay, but ganking with her feet is much better. In duels, she's a solid A tier hero because her parry punish impale is a great clutch potential because it deals so much damage, and if there's a wall, my god, prepare to get stomped by War Mommy. Prepare! You'll like it, I promise. Warlord is next up on this A tier list because he is a beast. He's got hyper on all of his heavies, decent tracking on them too if I do say so myself. Undodgeable zone, a full block of which you can light heavy, undodgeable heavy, zone, or headbutt out of, which means he's got some spicy mix-ups he can do. Russian counters also exist for him, so playing defensive and offensive is a playstyle you should adapt to. His crash and charge is still pretty good, and throw distance is amazing, great for ganking or clutching your fights out by ledging them into the lake. You can't underestimate Warlord because he's a tank, but he also hits pretty darn hard too. Anti-ganking it's okay, it's not really that good, but his stalling and ganking are top tier. His feats are pretty basic with Juggernaut and Fire Flash being the game changers. For duels, I would put him in A tier as he's got some pretty good matchups even against the top tiers. Berserker is A tier. He's got hyper armor on all of his chain attacks with unblockables to finish things off, so you can kind of just go monkey brain if you want to. His dodge attacks is undodgeables, and you get into his unblockable heavy right after that. Sadly, so many heroes can hit him and then dodge away with the recoveries, so now he's fallen off the meta, but he's still a great hero for team fights and 1v1 situations. Also can't roll from him since his forward dodge light and heavies have the most amazing tracking ever. Like, he's running after your ass, after that booty, after that boosie. The unreactable chain lights will chip enemies down, and your zone can be helpful in gank situations too, because it is a ganking tool. Anti-ganking is really top tier with Berserker, but his stalling and ganking are decent. Feats that are good for him are Doom Banner, Throwing Axe, Fury, and Fire Flask. Doom Banner takes a while to set up, but any character with Doom Banner, you should probably run because it's good area denial, very useful in team fights, and helps you deal more damage. For duels, Berserker is still an A+ tier hero because those delayed light chains with hyper armor and unblockables will take you out quickly. Still awake, Tiandi is the next hero that I believe is on the A tier category. He's got fast chain lights, undodgeable lights, a chain bash, a neutral bash palm strike, which is really cool animation if I do say so myself. Decent a dragon dodge, which is his ballerina move. It has iframes, but with so much undodgeables and people that have better tracking these days, it just doesn't really cut it anymore. And a forward dodge, hyper armor heavy, which can be useful in some situations for trading. His zone is pretty quick and has good hitboxes that can lead into his kick mix-up. The only useful thing about it is that you can set up damage for your teammates when they do fly away. As for his feats, Running Tireless, Marked for Death, or Doom Banner, which is the best one in my opinion, Vital Leech and Indomitable will increase your survivability by a lot. His anti-ganking, stalling, and ganking are all pretty decent if I do say so myself. Tiandi has low damage values and doesn't really do anything extraordinary anymore, but I think he's still really good Vanguard to start off with, really easy to play, and sort of safe until you get to the higher levels. For duels, he can still hold his own, so I'm putting him up in A tier. Medjay, the new Egyptian hero. He's a pretty interesting hero if I do say myself. I think I'm going to put him in low A tier. He's a bit tricky to place as his kit is neither great nor bad. It's more annoying if anything, but in this meta, I believe you can pretty much monkey brain him and still get value with his hyper armor heavies that have, I think that has the biggest trajectories, the biggest hitboxes I've ever seen in For Honor. However, swapping between his two weapons feels pretty clunky, and his role in Dominion pretty much falls into the ganking / trading category. I think you can get good value if you target swap your attacks consistently and setting up the grab, but you'll need to watch your health because you will be taking a lot of damage. However, his side heavy damage due to 30 damage, I've seen a lot of success from him in Dominion because he feels like an Elden Ring boss where his heavies are just so damn slow that you'll get hit by them even though you thought you parried them or you dodged. So that's the one thing that's going for him, and if he doesn't have that hyper armor, he's basically screwed. His dodge attack also lets you reposition, and it's basically another Kensei zone dodge attack, so expect target swapping more often with this hero. It's very safe, and I'd say it has good hitboxes too. His dual axe form has a fast 500 MS bash, which is good for pressure. Unfortunately, it only does 9 damage, and less if you're hitting someone with the Bastion perk. You can use it in an unblockable finisher, but its hitboxes is so bad compared to his staff. Heavies, you really have to be swapping weapons according to the situation, but there's so much to his kit still. I feel like some people think that he's not very strong in a 1v1 potential, so as long as you get him away from the team, he's not as strong, but in my opinion, I find that he is just as strong in teamfighting as he is with his dual axes. His chain lights in his dual axe form are actually 400 MS, so they are ridiculously fast, and comboing that with his chain bash, it's really not that bad of a mix-up. It can really whittle you down if you aren't paying attention and making the right reads. Even some of his animations look really weird, especially his unblockable one where when he throws out the attack, it just comes out instantly, and that really bugs me. I don't know if that's normal or if it's just me, but I have trouble parrying that attack. Attacking and stalling, anti-ganking and stalling with him is fairly decent, but I think ganking is his strong suit with his grabs and team fighting. In duels, he is incredibly unfun and boring to play against. His kit revolves mainly around his bash, and unreactable light makes it while swapping to his staff form is really only a distraction for your opponent. I think it's more fun to use him than to play against him, and in that itself, that's kind of like bad game design in my opinion. I will definitely say he's more scarier as a team fighter than a duelist. B tier in duels. Gryphon, I believe, is still a low A tier pick or high B tier pick. There's a bunch of things you can do with him. Even though he's a shell of himself to his previous nerf, he's still got the forward bash, the chain kick makes up the undodgeable lights, a pretty decent tracking on his side finisher heavies, a roll catcher to get those rollers, and a really good wall punish with his forward top heavy. It's incredibly strong. He gets hyper armor from going after a parry follow-up attack, which is a really neat thing. Dodge attacks aren't too shabby either, especially when you target swap. His kit allows him to have variability within his mix-up, and you can do well even if you're just mashing buttons. Gotta make sure you're not spamming those dodge attacks though, because people will be parrying them unless you're externaling. His anti-ganking and stalling capabilities, they're pretty average, so is his ganking capabilities. His feats that I like to run are all the healing ones: Dragonite Mist, Dragonite Bolt, Dragonite Cleaner, or Champion's Aura. You should always be running the perk Rapid Refresh though, if you guys want some tips, so you can get your feats back much faster. This is the box of the water, letting you guys know. Speedy Revive will also help you with your feats more quickly, because Rapid Refresh will make your feats go faster, and so you can shoot your bow and use your AoE heal more often. For duels, Gryphon, in my honest opinion, is still a solid A tier hero. He still has a bash and a couple chain mix-ups, so he's not as bad as some other heroes, but he still has a decent kit. On to the B tier list. Kensei has some decent aspects about his kit. Nice wide heavies, good zone attack, good reach with his lights for peeling, which means helping your teammates with range. Nature's Wrath catches rollers, unblockable chain finisher that can be softened into light or heavy with hyper armor, and of course his pommel will help him out from time to time, but it's kind of useless in some regard, actually most regards. His top heavy finisher is a little bit too slow. They definitely need to speed that up for it to be viable. His dodge attack is still all reliable, and his superior block really helps him out quite a bit, if I do say so myself. If he managed to get a superior block on the top, he has an option to go for a guaranteed guard break, which is pretty cool. Sadly, in this meta, he just doesn't really cut it, since everybody has dodge attacks, full block cancels, undodgeables, recovery cancels, and all that good stuff. Kensei just can't compete as well as he used to. He pretty much has to play perfectly, and that goes for essentially most of the cast that's under B tier. Anti-ganking is okay, but his stalling and ganking are pretty subpar. His feats are nothing to write home about besides Chilling Stare and Unblockable for his 4th feat, which is, I think that's really the only redeeming factor about this hero in Dominion. In Duels Kensei, I'm dropping him to C tier because his openers are too darn slow, and so are his unblockable mix-ups. He doesn't really have anything. You have to play perfectly, like I said. Shaman is next on the B tier list. She does have some solid offense when it comes to her softening bleed attack, which allows her to initiate her pounce or her bite, but you'll need to be on your toes in doing so, because a lot of people like to light or interrupt you, and teammates love doing that as well, because your bite takes so long. It's a really slow ganking tool, but it's a really cool animation, so it's a win-win-lose-lose-lose situation. It can be hard to use to its full potential, so you gotta have good teammates on your side. She does have a bash, but it uses so much stamina, and it's incredibly slow compared to other bashes. You're better off just feigning it and try to go for a GB, and just using your soft feints. Her heavies can soften into a guard break, which is nice, but she doesn't really contribute much to team fights. She has no range with her light attacks or her heavies. Unblockable heavy on her left side is incredibly slow. It's like 1100 ms. It's really slow, and it just doesn't really cut it. Although I will say it has some good hitboxes when you're trying to external it. One of the best things about her kit is that nobody can run away from her, essentially. You can pretty much just catch anybody down with the forward dodge heavy attack. The only dodge cancel she has is within her chain heavy mix-ups, and it's mostly used to conserve stamina or make your movement a little bit wild. Her anti-ganking and stalling are terrible, but her ganks can be usable. In duels, she thrives since nobody can external you, and they'll be forced to fight you head on, so you'll have to watch out for those bleed attacks. A+ tier. Her bleed will come in handy because she heals off of it with every hit while they're bleeding, and her bite will give you her HP back. A neat thing to do too is that with her bash, she can wall splat you, allowing you to get a bleed or a heavy attack. So it's a really fun mix-up, and I hope Ubisoft doesn't really notice this because they love to phase things out, especially unique moves. So let's be quiet about this, okay? Shh. Valkyrie seems to have a kit that you can kind of press buttons and hope for the best. Sometimes work, sometimes it doesn't. It's not an amazing kit, but she's got a bash, a Walmart version of Shaolin sweep, a deflect, a backwards dodge full block that has some place in a fight sometimes, and of course her crushing counters, which is not too shabby. There's something there that can work, but I personally need to be using my brain to get any value out of her. I don't really have the best of luck when I use her. Maybe it's because I'm using her wrong, but I've got like 10 reps on her, and I feel like I understand the character. It's just that I can't get her to work with this meta. I think her only redeeming quality is her forward dodge light, and it's an amazing roll catcher. It can get parried pretty easily, but it's only good for a roll catcher. Anti-ganking, stalling, and ganking is pretty average since she doesn't have undodgeables or unblockable heavies, so she's left with just having to guard break or letting the bash or heavy fly. Her sweep is okay, but it sweeps your teammate too, so that's just sad. She does have amazing feats though, with Bloodlust, Javelin, and Fire Flask, but her kit needs a few tweaks to get her up there. For duel, she's gonna drop to high C tier. She's underrated, really she is, but I think she requires a little bit more brain power and thought to work. I don't really fear a Valkyrie when I'm fighting against her, or I want a Valkyrie on my team either, but she does have defense that you'll need to watch out for with crushing counters, her dodge attacks, her deflect, and her full block. So it's all there, but she needs a little bit more of a oomph to make her a little bit more viable. Thigh there, it's done like last time. Highlander has the same issue. There's a lot of tools in his kit, and if used fully and correctly, he's a really scary matchup. However, that requires you to use your brain to the fullest, and that's kind of where everything falls apart, especially in this tier list. So high C tier in my opinion. In defensive form, he has crushing counter lights, hyper armor on all of his slow ass heavies, Celtic Curse, which is not that bad. It can get you some mix-ups here and there, but all these moves will get you into your offensive stance, which is what you really want to be doing. This is where he shines, as he can throw out unblockable heavies as long as he has stamina, and those deal a ton of damage, at 30 I believe. He can also wave dash, which gives him iframes and allows him to dodge faster than every other character from neutral. His kick to caber is only useful in heroes that are out of stamina, as most players with stamina will dodge roll away from you, and if they don't, well, that's free kick to caber for you, because it's actually a really good mix-up if they don't dodge roll. So you're stuck using the unblockable heavy into kick mix-up or going for a guard break after the unblockable heavy feint. The strongest part of his kit is his offensive lights. There are 400 MS lights that can be used consecutively and be mixed in within his emotes and feint to neutral. Nobody can really react to them consistently, which is why it's his bread and butter. They deal about 9 damage, but if you get hit by like 3 of those or 4 of those, it really adds up. Another really important thing to note is that if he lands a light parry on you, he can use his offensive stance heavy, which nets him 30 damage, and follow with an instant light attack, which is going to be about 39 damage. If you can't block those, which most people cannot, you're gonna have to guess on which side it's going to be. It's a really high damage light parry. It's not something you should scoff at and underestimate. For his feats, Spear Storm, that's all I have to say, it's OP. In team fights, you'll want to be trying to land those unblockable heavies and bait down heroes that dodge attacks so you can crush and counter them externally or just onto them. He has a really high skill curve, but this tier list is all about what gives you value by not trying too hard, or a hero that has a low skill floor and really gives you value when you're not playing him 100% optimally. In duels, he's still relatively the same, as you'll need to be on your toes and making really good reads, as you don't have a dodge attack, but you will in the future. But with his high damage values on light parries, you can't really underestimate him. C tier for duels. Nobushi is a very painful hero to play. I think her kit can be used well, but requires more reads than you'd like, and a lot of game knowledge. A C tier hero, as too many heroes are faster than her and have a better defensive stance than you. Her bleed lights can be useful, but her main kit is her kick and undodgeable heavy finishers. A zone that has a beautiful hitbox, but nothing special compared to the top tiers, as most of them can hyper armor or dodge cancel recovery faster than you. The hidden stance is helpful in some degree when trying to evade and reposition, plus allowing her to undodgeable heavy when in hidden stance can help you get out. Granted, she does get more damage if an opponent is bleeding, so that can clutch out some fights pretty easily, but that's when her strengths end. I believe Nobushi can't do much against most of the cast in team fights unless you have a good teammate and you're working your brain off, and she slipped off the meta because she has terrible dodge attacks where she loses iframes the second you press heavy or light, and she has no neutral pressure whatsoever. You can just external and dodge away from her, especially if you have a hero that has a really far dodge range like Raider or even Pirate. Her chain pressure is also laughably bad unless you are behind a wall. She has no anti-ganking capabilities for her ganking and stalling, also non-existent. As for her feats, nothing really special there again, but what I like to do is run rapid refresh and speed revive so when I get my bow or fire trap quicker and act as a real game. As for her feats, nothing special there again, but what I like to do is to run rapid refresh and speed revive so I can get my bow and fire trap much quicker. It acts as like a real support hero in the game, and you'd be surprised how many smoke bomb, arrow strikes, and bombs you can get by playing this way. Rapid refresh really helps you get this much quicker. In duels, she is trash. D tier, no pressure whatsoever. Just block and parry her and you'll be good. Oh dear, now we're up onto Nuxia. There's a reason why I don't play this hero on stream and why I don't play this character in general, because you really have to be thinking to get value out of her, especially in like mid to like high level. This hero has been ignored for years. I think she's like a low C tier. She's in such a terrible and weird spot. Her traps are scary but can be evaded by emote dodging, changing guards, and just doing a raw heavy, which is hilarious. And I've taken way too many heavies to the face by using Nuxia, so I'm tired of it. But the only good thing, one of the good things actually, is her unreactable chain lights. Those things will chip you down because they are incredibly fast. I mean, there's not much to say about her since her traps feed revenge, and they can also kill someone that hasn't popped revenge yet, which is nice. But I really think she doesn't get enough value unless you are on crack. I think she's sort of underrated, but like I said, you gotta be using that noggin. No dodge cancel recoveries or unblockables to help her. The deflect is inconsistent as it can be blocked, and you have to like change it in a different direction, but it can be hard to do that consistently. Anti-ganking and ganking are actually okay, but her stalling is just terrible. Her dodge attack, I feel like it doesn't have that much iframes compared to other characters. In Duels, she's a much better hero though, because you can't really external her, you have to emote, change your guard, and actually respect her traps. And she also has those fast lights, like I said before. They will chip you down, and you gotta be ready for those. You also have to be ready for her chain heavies and her finisher heavies, which can wall split, and that is game changing. It's actually an awesome animation. It's a really good clutch potential too. This is a hero that you can't really underestimate, but you really got to be working your brain to get some value out of her. So Nuxia is definitely going to be like a B or a high C tier duelist. Warden is such a cool hero. Sadly, Ubisoft just won't allow him to be, you know, a swordsman, unfortunately. He's a C tier hero in Dominion because all he has is a shoulder bash, which feeds a ton of revenge, and it's not fast enough to deal damage. There's too many heroes with dodge cancel recoveries that your bash won't really track them about like 80% of the time. If you do land it, well, prepare for your teammates to feed more revenge. His unblockable side heavies have decent tracking, but with dodge externalers and cancelers, you can't really reliable go for guard breaks, and that just falls flat on his face. So you kind of just have to edge the bash the entire time and scare them into using the bash. His zone uses half his stamina for some reason still, even after like a billion reworks. It's just not okay. Lower his stamina cost for that to like Warmongers, and he'll be a lot more viable, with a few tweaks to his kit of course. His feats are worthless, and there's no need to mention them besides morale booster, which gives you an attack boost. Duels, he's still a top tier hero of course, an A tier, but I really think you still need to make good reads with your bashes and parry them when interrupts come, because a lot of heroes have dodge cancel recoveries these days. And that will do it for the C tiers. Moseying on over to the D tiers, where the kidney stone experience truly begins. Now I've changed my mind about some of these over the past tier list. I've made some adjustments since the meta has shifted into a ballerina meta. That means if you don't have some sort of defensive capabilities besides parrying, then you're practically screwed. That is why I'm putting Lawbringer, Centurion, Jormungandr, and Peacekeeper there. Why do you say that? Before, I'd probably put Jorm in C tier since he has good damage values and amazing feats, but since the stamina changes, these three heroes suffer tremendously since their pressure pretty much revolve around having the opponent go out of stamina. When you are there in their face and they get all their stamina back right away, there's no real pressure you can apply to them anymore. Cent can only go for Eagle's Talon on grab throw before he could throw them backwards or forward, and then use his kick and then follow with an unchargeable heavy into his punch mix while they had no stamina. This is actually pretty decent. It took a long time, but that was his only way to punish people. The only way Cent can get a light into heavy is if it's an OLS parry, which is out of stamina parry. Cent for duels, Cent still has Pugyo and Haymaker, which is great, really good for Dominion, but I don't know, I just feel like he can't finish people off fast enough. The only way he's going to be good is if people know how to gank with you to land your fully charged punch. That's the only time he's good. But other than that, man, I feel like sometimes his Eagle's Talon should be as strong as Jormungandr's, like 38 damage, because it's so hard to get Sense punished. I don't know, maybe it's Jormungandr's, I mean Jormungandr's also hard to get it too, but Cent kind of feels the same way. Cent for duels is around B tier since he does have his chain 50-50 bash, but it's just not as good as Wardens or Warmongers. And his kick is fairly slow too, but I feel like his kick is okay. It's just that his punch needs to be, have a little bit more variable time in my opinion. Jorm can't do his max punishes anymore now on throw or out of stamina parries. What he could do before is that he could dodge, do a light attack into a heavy attack, and they would fly, dealing you way more damage. The only thing you can do now is let his heavy fly and hope it lands to get his nut slam afterwards, but a lot of people can just like walk backwards and back dodge, as it doesn't really have any good tracking. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, so it's really inconsistent. All they have to do is literally just improve the tracking, and he'll be much stronger, I promise you. Granted, Jorm does have a 38 damage slam, his teammate can probably get a heavy attacking, but it's a really tedious game when you're fighting against this hero. As stamina becomes stronger, you will not be able to get those punishes as often. I will say that if you can't dodge his bashes consistently, he can be a nuisance and a very scary hero if he makes good reads, but it's still a chore to fight him and play as him. For duels, I'd probably put Jorm in like C tier or D tier. I personally think he's better than Nobushi, since his punishes are better. He has hyper armor, he has like a bash that can help him reduce stamina, it makes the fight more tedious, and Nobushi's handstand isn't that really helpful against him. And my main reasoning for this is that while it's a chore fighting Jormungandr, I feel like it's very easy fighting Nobushi, and that says a lot in my opinion. Lawbringer is affected by this too. To an extent, his entire kit revolves around parrying and trying to play defensively with his dodge bash to enter his unblockable heavy mix-up. His punishes haven't really changed too much as he still gets 2 heavies, but having stamina right afterwards for the enemy as he goes into his unblockable heavy, it makes him a little bit weaker. That and seeing red, blue, yellow as Lawbringer means you can't do anything in team fights. You're basically just a punching bag for every hero, and it's not really fun when you're drunk, you know? You literally have to be pairing everything and looking at the map and be like, okay, is that guy externally me? What is he gonna do? Is he gonna externally guard break me so I can't dodge? Like, what do I do? There's nothing you can do except make good reads. In duels, I probably rate him about low B tier since his punishes are still pretty good, but that kind of means you need to parry too, so it's kind of complicated. His dodge bash will save him, and it's a really good defensive tool and allows him to get into his unblockable mix-up, but it's incredibly hard, and it's going to be an uphill battle, so I might put him in like low B tier for sure, and for Dominion, it's definitely going to be like, D tier for sure. As for Peacekeeper, she still has some of the same issues of having no real pressure unless they are bleeding. Most people will try to external you, and you have to play smart and passively to do well, but you really gotta be paying attention. She has high guard break damage values with 38 with her triple stab lights, but that's the only redeeming quality about her. If you manage to get someone alone, that is gonna be your best bet. Okay, if you manage to get someone alone, that's probably your best bet to get some kills, but you'll still need to have good reads against the top tier heroes because you're gonna have to be pairing those unblockables for days. That's why in duels she's gonna be an A tier. She still has the skill curve to be all the way up in the S tiers, but if I'm chilling, vibing, listening to music, and not focusing too much, I've had a little bit of cocktails here and there, she has disadvantages against the other top heroes. You gotta be playing perfectly. She needs those parries, and she has to be dodging those bashes consistently to be considered good, and to get those bleeds off regularly. These last 4 heroes need some quality of life changes. Centurion is confirmed on getting a dodge bash, so that'll help him a lot, but as for the other 3, I'm not sure what Ubisoft plans to do with them, and I'm also really scared for them too. Would I rather have the Ubisoft interns try to fix these heroes, or leave them the way they are so that they at least feel unique and skillful to an extent? You guys tell me, let me know your opinions down below. You've made it to the end of the video though, so thank you so much guys, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. What are your thoughts on my placements? Do you agree with my takes, or were you surprised on some of them? Because I'm sure some of you guys are. You guys are very opinionated, so let me know. And of course, this is just my opinion from playing this game for over 5 years, and I'd say I don't really have a bias towards any hero, maybe except for Pirate. I can see a hero's power level objectively from the PC perspective, but if your experiences are different, please be sure to let me know. The S and the A tier heroes, I never really have issues with them in matchmaking lobbies, if I'm playing them of course, but as soon as I pick any hero that's lower than that, I start to feel like my butt cheeks sweat. But that'll do it for me. I want to make a Valkyrie video first, but I'm planning on doing the most useful For Honor tips I learned after 4,000 hours video, as I think a lot of people would enjoy that, and it would be pretty fun to make too. So let me know what you guys want to see in the future. The box is going to bed now. Bye bye. See you later.